Fernand is out there spinning as a somewhat high-end tropical storm and may try to make a run for hurricane status before it spins out far enough into the North Atlantic to essentially dissipate over those cooler waters and become wrapped up in the pattern just as its counterpart prior to Aaron did a few days back. And then from there, we're quiet. We're kind of turned off for a little bit. The tropics have shut their doors. At least they are anticipated to shut their doors until perhaps the first 5 to 7 days of September can rock by. And then it does look like we are immediately off to the races. And so today, for your tropical update, we're not going to talk too much about what's happening now. We're going to do a bit of an abbreviated discussion on what lies ahead. Welcome back to the Weather Center, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your Monday. Today is August 25th, 2025. I hope everything is great in your neck of the woods. Happy Monday to everybody. If you're brand new to the channel, before we get started, some housekeeping as always. It would sincerely mean a lot to us if you kindly consider hitting that subscribe button. Let's give that like button a little nudge, get that information out to those who would benefit from it. We've been doing fantastic, building some quality momentum here on the channel. And for those of you who were asking where I was over the weekend, well, we had Fernand develop, but there's really not a lot going on out there. And that's also why we're not going to talk too much current conditions today. We're going to save that for down the ways a little bit. So give that like button a little nudge, share this information with those you believe would benefit from it, as well as drop me a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts on the peak season ahead that does look to possibly not disappoint, to tell you the truth. But I will go ahead and let the data do the talking for us. So first and foremost, National Hurricane Center's homepage. If you notice, we are now lacking 99L down in the bottom here. As soon as that little wave, the little wave that could, likely again, a tropical depression at the minimum once it was moving off the coast of Africa in the eastern and central MDR. But after that, once the dry air got into it and then a trademark upper low right out in front of it helped to stretch the wave axes out, it had kind of signed its death wish, more or less. And as soon as it made its way through the windward and leeward islands of the Lesser Antilles, it essentially vanished. What was left of it as it got caught in the acceleration in our easterly flow through the eastern Caribbean. It's kind of just, yeah, it's a dead stick out there now, and I'm not really paying too much attention to it. No model guidance suggests anything could come of it. We'll obviously continue to keep one eye open over the next 3 to 5 days. If it does somehow, or remnants of it, make it towards the Cayman Islands, westernmost Cuba, towards the Yucatan Channel, possibly Central America, maybe, but I wouldn't even give it too much of a, too much attention out there, folks. I'll go ahead and watch it. We'll marinate on it a little bit, but only feature we have out there right now is Fernand, and I do anticipate we're not going to have anything popping up on this chart for the foreseeable future. Here's a quick glance at the latest on Tropical Storm Fernand. You can see as of the 11 o'clock advisory, max sustained winds at 60 miles an hour. We're going to try to make a run for hurricane status, but this thing is quickly gaining latitude, and we're running out of warm ocean waters, and we're very quickly going to encounter the same westerly wind shear that Aaron had to battle with as it traversed the northeast United States and Atlantic Canada, following in hot pursuit of that now non-tropical low out in front of Fernand. You can see it is moving north-northeast at 13 miles an hour, and we should be getting another advisory here within the next few hours upon shooting this video. We'll be curious to see if it actually does deepen to hurricane status, but right now, National Hurricane Center does think this will peak around 70-ish mile-an-hour sustained winds. Now let's get you over to some satellite imagery. First and foremost, you can see much of the Atlantic itself is dead. The intertropical convergence zone near the Cabo Verde Islands, even the wave train that became synonymous with the month of August has since tapered off. We are now outside of phases 1, 2, and 3 of the MJO, and we're really starting to see those background pressures build back in. And you can see a large majority of the central and eastern tropical Atlantic and even the subtropical Atlantic is scarce of even any cloud cover. And that goes to show you that those pressures are rising, and we're starting to squish the atmosphere back down again, creating those higher pressures and that sinking motion relative to what we just experienced. The Eastern Pacific is definitely rocking, though. They're already starting to see some action down there along the extension of the ITCZ out there and the Pacific Monsoonal Trough. Before you know it, though, we're going to start to pay more attention down and through here. And models are actually already showing that for the main development region in particular, as we get past the first 5 to 7 days of September, that's when things are already going to start to get a little more active out there right now. We still have a pretty active weather pattern across the United States, though. You can see a nice jet streak working its way through the central and southern plains, increasing the showers and storms for portions of Kansas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Arkansas. And then down here we have a frontal boundary, an unseasonably strong frontal boundary draped through the interior portions of central and northern Florida, extending back over the central Gulf. It's been driving a lot of thunderstorm action here in Florida. I just got home a little while ago, and I swear I was socked in the entire drive home, and then I got to head back out again for work here momentarily. This is Fernand. You can see a fairly impressive convective signature with it, and it continues to consolidate and organize further, which is why I do think before it encounters the wind shear associated with this upper trough and this mature occluded system back up over eastern Canada, the northeast United States, it does have a shot at becoming Hurricane Fernand. But right now, I'd be totally comfortable sending this thing on its way as a higher-end tropical storm. Managed to stay far to the east of Bermuda, so virtually no one felt any impacts from this guy. And then finally down here, this puffy batch of popcorn-looking thunderstorms. That is what's left of 99L. No discernible vorticity. Doesn't even look like a tropical wave at this point. Just looks like an area of moisture developing over those warmer eastern Caribbean waters. Waters are definitely hot, and we're starting to see more of a focus of our water temperatures being the warmest through the western tropical Atlantic, the Caribbean, and then back up through the Gulf. And I do think that could have implications down the road for the rest of the hurricane season, the back end of it. Let's get into some of that long-range data. So we're not going to spend too much time on this because, as I mentioned before, we've already kind of hammered this one home, and you're all aware of these tropical cyclone probabilities, especially as we go through the meat and potatoes, the midsections of September. You can see some pretty vibrant signatures near the Lesser Antilles. That's what's left of 99L. And then these very, very vibrant colors to the east of Bermuda racing off into the North Atlantic. That is Fernand. A little bit of a weak homegrown signature associated with that frontal band that's hanging out right along the eastern seaboard of the U.S., but not seeing too much in the way of things latching onto that. Possible we still get a nice little low-pressure center. It's been synonymous with this hurricane season, seeing those frontal systems blossom into some kind of low-pressure center, or maybe even a tropical feature, just like we saw with Chantal, Dexter. Could there be a potential? Yes, but I'll tell you the truth, I'm personally not watching it too closely, and given the steering current and that we're now in a positive Pacific North American oscillation with that big old extension of a long wave trough over the eastern half of the country, this thing's going to ricochet right out into the ocean, just as Aaron and now Fernand have done. As you go into the first couple days of September, though, notice not only are we watching close to home, but then out through the MDR. And then once you fast forward from the 8th through the 15th of September, we're pretty much back in business, back in full swing. You can see the probabilities going up both left and right, metaphorically speaking and literally speaking, because I do think the chance of seeing a broad Central American gyre is still a possibility. We've got a couple of perturbations, some Kelvin wave passings that are likely to undergo a little bit of, additional favorability across the Atlantic. Basically, they're going to come across, and it's going to help to amp things up on the west side of the basin. If I were to take my epic pen here and just slash this thing in half like so, Kelvin wave is likely going to nurture this side, and then once we finally get a bit more of the actual MJO pulse to come through, we're going to add in the MDR as well, as you can see off the coast of Africa there. If I go to the back end of the run, I know this is fairly far out, the 15th or the 22nd, you can see both signatures very healthy, very alive and well, and kind of that same mixed bag we were talking about even back in January, February, and March. You can see it down and through here, pretty robust signal, kind of a signal that we'll still have to watch in the southeast and the eastern United States, and then every now and again we get a ripple in the pattern allowing for one or two of these tropical waves to escape out into the central Atlantic. So it does look like September and October, all hands on deck, more or less. This has been very interesting to watch as well. The progression of how the Euro and our other dynamical models have been treating the movement of our MJO. So currently, where we stand now, you can see right where all those red shades are, we're now in phase 4. That's going to promote the most sinking that we could possibly get in the Atlantic, on top of what we're still recovering from, the hangover effect from those cooler months in terms of our water temperatures, January all the way out through May. I want you to look closely at our orange, blue, and green members here, however. That's between days 10, 15, and 20. And a large majority of those, once I clear the ink, if you look, are actually not only trending into the more optimal phases, but we're seeing a huge extension of more members suggesting we will have an enhanced push of the MJO come across, which is precisely what sparked in Hurricane Erin, if not maybe even a little more than that, going forward because of the fact that we're no longer truthfully battling too strugglesome of a background state. You know, it's going to be the peak of the hurricane season. We have just about everything working for our tropical waves, minus the natural intra-seasonal things like a tut, pockets of wind shear, some dry air off the continental European landmass, northwestern Africa. You know, the little things that models struggle to pick up on, but the general favorability of the Atlantic should be good to go. You can see it here as well once we switch over to the actual dynamical models courtesy of Climate Prediction Center. When you look at the Euro probabilities as well as the GEFS, the GFS even more so than the Euro, surprisingly, actually really helps to bring across an excited MJO, especially through phases 1 and 2 over the next 15 days. It does kind of once again do that usual bias of getting stuck in the Western Pacific in phases 7 and 8, but regardless, it does circle it back around. And when you switch over to the Euro, you see the exact same thing by about day 15. This is as we get closer to September 6th through September 8th. It's all systems go, more or less. We're going to be rocking into the most favorable setup for the Atlantic. I've also been watching this very closely as well. These are your tropical probabilities and the frequency of your named storms out there per our sub-seasonal forecasting from the Euro, the ECMWF website here. And right now, this is between September 1st and September 8th, and you can already see that for the Atlantic, the Euro is thinking we could at least see one named storm within those dates and times. You go to the 8th through the 15th, the same thing, slightly above the potential of at least one named storm. And then as you go to the 15th or the 22nd, definitely looking anywhere between an additional named storm or two. So on average, what this tells me is the Euro is definitely predicting we can round out September with 2 or 3 more named storms, possibly hurricanes, at a minimum. A minimum. Remember, these are your average anomalies in comparison to climatology. That's where the green and the orange colors at the top are. Forecast mean is your baseline for those 7 days. So we could see at a minimum of 2 to 3 additional named storms through September. And again, that is the baseline, not the ceiling. That's the baseline of when you take everything into the equation and you put it on this chart here. That's why it has the different color codings. And you just got to recognize how to interpret it and then communicate it to your audience. It all kind of comes into perspective when you look up here. You're looking at the ensembles all put together and then the climate background, the climate data that's plugged into this sub-seasonal model. And so when you see numbers like 1.1, 1.2, 1.4, it's essentially saying each week of the domain specified or highlighted by the model, you could see on average a named storm during that period. So to tie it up into a bundle, September looks pretty busy, and I think after the first 7 days, we're going to see the Atlantic wake up once again. These are your ensemble mean probabilities for our velocity anomalies. This is actually going to be for 15 days. I'm going to start off with the 15-day range just to show you how quick of a turnaround we may be on our hands here. You can see there is that huge suppressed phase that's going to persist from now, the 25th, until we get just past turning the calendars to September 1st, and then things right away start to percolate back up with the passage of that Kelvin wave. This isn't quite the MJO just yet. We're going to have a couple of weak pulses generated from the MJO as it propagates across the eastern and central Pacific, work our way. That's what I do think could encourage a bit of a gyre to try to set up. Models are not too jazzed about that just yet. We'll have to wait and see. But then when you switch over to your large scale, your long range 46-day, that's where you can start to pick apart all the different individual pieces and pulses that will be moving across the Atlantic. We have a weak one still sitting over Africa at the very tail end of August. Then here comes that first one. Could tickle the atmosphere just enough to get that Central American gyre and some MDR activity going as we get closer to the infamous September 11th anniversary. Then we get another big pulse, and then finally MJO really comes back into phase as we get ready to turn our attention to October. So truthfully, I know we're talking far out. Your general takeaways, if you've stuck with me to the end of this video, because I promise that's it. Don't really want to show you too much model data because there really isn't too much out there. Ensembles are already showing from the GFS, the Canadian, and the Euro and its AI counterparts that by about September 5th, we'll already have more robust tropical waves coming off of Africa once again, and the GFS and some of the Euro on and off runs. I say on and off because it's not a hefty signal, nor is it persistent, but both the GFS and the Euro also suggest closer to home near Central America, getting that CAG going, as I like to say, is also potential. And we can talk more about that as we go through the week and we get a little bit closer in time. That's why I didn't want to take up too much of your time today looking at all the little nuances on models, because there really isn't anything glaring out there. Don't want to go on a long, hot-winded spiel to talk, little minute signals that we still have 7, 10, 14 days to track. The overall big picture, though, suggests that as we move through the first week or two of September, it's all hands on deck. We're going to be rocking once again. So we all just got to enjoy the break while we can, dial our stuff back in, whether you're in the islands, the Lesser Antilles, the Greater Antilles, areas previously hit by Erin and some of her outer bands. And then obviously here in the United States, it's going to be game on very soon, because September and October look to have those twin signals closer to us and then out across the actual tropics. And that'll do it for today's Weather Center segment. Thank you so much for your patience over the weekend. I hope you all didn't mind me taking Saturday and Sunday off. Sometimes, as a content creator and with everything else happening in the background, it's a way of my playing it safe. If there really isn't too much to talk about, I don't want to grasp at straws and cherry pick, this model at 300 hours showed this. Now, I can very easily sum that up in a sentence or two, and we're back. So we'll have another video coming at you on Wednesday. Going to try to fit in a tropical discussion, a live stream here one of these days. This week is going to be very different, though, because I'm working nights all the way through to the weekend, so we may not be able to get a live stream off the ground this week, but you can count on me for your actual tropical weather updates, just like this one, before we round out the last full week of August and see what September has in store for us. But guys, I hope everything is great in your world. Thank you all for being so generous, kind, and sincere with the sweetest comments ever, and just an amazing community. Much love to everybody out there, and we'll see you again soon. But until then, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.